Good evening and welcome to the Friday Forecast. I am your host, Chris. Yes, 3 times now. It's definitely becoming a regular. And today I'm joined by Oscar from All Leeds TV because Joe decided he can't come on again. So, of course, Matt is here, our new regular. And after his diabolical Liverpool will beat Fulham 5-0, Avi is currently banned from the Friday Forecast. Only kidding. Avi will be back next week. So instead, we've got a great place. We've got Pete Selby from, I'm going to make sure I get this right, The Fox's Sake podcast, which is still the best name for a podcast. Gentlemen, how are we all?
Fine, good. Absolutely fine.
Good. Right, so today we're going to start with a South Coast derby. We're going to start with Southampton, who have just lost Danny Ings, versus Brighton, who can't hit a barn door despite taking a lead. So, Matt, how are you feeling about Southampton versus Brighton?
It's just going to be a game of two teams who are just sad, really. Like two teams who feel like they should be in a better position than they should. You know, like I always say with Southampton, it's almost like they had a really good spell, kind of sandwich in between two 9-0s. And look, I know that Twitter page will be going on now that we've mentioned the 9-0, but you know they were so good for that 12, 18 months, whatever it was, and just whatever's happened as quickly as Ralph Hasenhüttl did manage to revive the form of that team, it's fallen away, and they're back down to a team who are struggling to put the ball in the net and struggling for goals. And speaking of a team struggling for goals, what's going on at Brighton? It's absolutely bizarre. And I know expected goals and expected points and all that thing is a stat that, you know, you either love or you hate. And I know a lot of fans at the moment seem to be leaning towards hating that, but with Brighton, it's completely bizarre. With the expected points in the Premier League, they'd be fourth in the table, and look, fighting the relegation, only I think 1 point clear of the relegation zone. They're a far cry from that. They've got 27 goals from an XG of 47.52. It's really crazy. And that those games against Palace and West Brom combined, they had an XG of over 5, scoring just 1 goal and losing both those games. It's utterly bizarre, but I think it is going to be a game that will be interesting, because for all of the woes that these two teams are having, a lot of the time they do play really good football, and I feel like there are good players within that Southampton team who can trouble Brighton, the likes of James Ward-Prowse, who for me is one of the best players outside of the top 6 in the Premier League, and I'll be looking forward to see how we can kind of influence that game. And we know what we're going to get with Brighton: good football. Good philosophy under Graham Potter, positive attacking play, but just can't put that ball in the back of the net. And I think you can question their finishing ability, but with what we saw against West Brom a couple of weeks back, you have to think there's someone out there just against them and preventing them from putting that ball in the back of the net. But I think it will be a good game, but in terms of goals, I think we'll be struggling to see too many, and I'd lean towards a 1-1 draw for this one.
Cool. That's all right then. Okay, so Oscar, give me some positivity about it.
What Matt said. No. Look. You look at Brighton, you think surely eventually they're going to start scoring goals. They're going to find that formula. But I don't know. I'm not sure if the stats always tell the full story. I know obviously they're a lot better than what the league position suggests, but I do question certain things about what Brighton do from time to time. You know, when they try and play out the back, and you're thinking, oh my word, you just haven't got the players for it. I mean, you're watching Dan Burn try and play out the back and that lot, and you're thinking, it just seems to be like forcing the philosophy onto the wrong kind of players in some cases. And then maybe that's a case of need to bring in some better players. But yeah, I think this will be a decent game, though. Still think it'll be a good, watchable game. I think both teams play football the right way, nice and positive on the front foot. Yeah, I can see goals in this. Do you want an early, quick prediction on this one?
Go on, then.
I'm going to go for a Desmond. I'm going to go for a 2-2 on this one.
I'd say if you put a bet on a 2-2, you'll get a big fee for that. My God. I must admit, though, I love Dan Burn at left back. He's the most unnatural looking left back I've ever seen. It's like watching Sammy Hippier at left back, but it works. It strangely works. Pete, how do you feel about Southampton Brighton?
Well, breaking news, I was going to go for a Desmond as well. So I don't know whether we're both going to be incredibly wrong with that, but we're both singing off the same hymn sheet.
Get the bets on.
It's one of them. If you put £10 on it, you lose £10. That's it, really, isn't it?
I'm feeling really confident now about this 2-2. But I know Brighton are the darlings of the stats league, but unfortunately, when you get to the final 10 games, those kind of get thrown out the window. If you're halfway through the season and you look at the XG League or shots on target, etc., then you can say, right, they could maybe turn around their form. They could maybe start putting that into practice and actually picking up points. But the problem is, when you get to the end of the season, you need to actually just throw that out the window and go, look, we actually need the points. No matter how they come, you need the points at the end of the day. And the story with these two sides, Brighton, obviously, maybe not Southampton, is the fact that they're both in poor form, but they're now being dragged into a relegation fight. Brighton are not even being dragged into the fight. They're ding-ding round one. They're taking centre stage and slugging it out with the likes of Fulham, who are in really good form, and then Newcastle, who picked up a point as we speak. So these two sides almost have to, especially when it comes to Brighton, maybe just throw some of the philosophy out of the window and start playing more of a style of football that maybe will bring them points and less style points. It's I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to go for 2-2 here, and I think Southampton will be boosted by probably Minamino playing with the lack of Ings, just a bit of style up front. Big fan of Adams, but just with a bit of guile there. We know they're very dangerous from set plays, and Brighton, they just can't hold on to a lead. When Leicester played them previous week, even though they scored early, Leicester playing the wrong formation, missing players, etc. Still, you always liked and fancied them to maybe pick them apart at one point. And yes, it was a wonderful no-look pass by Tielemans, but you just always have that hope against Brighton. So I think it doesn't matter which side score first. It doesn't matter which side are chasing the game. I can see both of these sides struggling to hold on to a lead. So I'm going to go for the draw.
Okay. You managed to mention two things to upset me there. Fulham, which is still raw, and Minamino, which even with Avi's not here, Minamino still gets a mention. Bless. Kiefer Sullivan thinks Southampton will pick Brighton up and go for the 3-1. Bonkers LFC is going for a 2-1 Brighton. I have gone for 2-0 Southampton, despite no Charlie Adam. I very rarely see Brighton score, and apart from when they play Liverpool. But then again, that's not a new thing at the moment. So for me, I still think Southampton will do it. I just think Southampton are a very strange side to be where they are. Quick question around the table. James Ward-Prowse, is he still at Southampton next season?
For me, he is, because Southampton would throw the money at him, and if he needs to sign a new contract to stay, then they should make him one of their best players. So unless best paid players. So unless a club come in with a really big offer, which I don't think is going to happen for many, many different reasons, non-James Ward-Prowse related, I think it's more of a bigger picture. I just think he's a guy they can pay over $100,000 a week for, and he'll stay. Why not? You're playing a decent Premier League level. He should be in the England squad in the summer. That will be the only question. If he's not in the England squad, does he look at it and go, hang on, I might need to go somewhere else to get that nod? I'm playing the best football in my career. He should be in the England squad for me.
Good point. Oscar?
Yeah, I think he'll still be a Southampton player. I think his age kind of works against him a little bit. If he was 2 or 3 years younger, I think a lot of the top 6 Evertons and that lot, maybe just below top 6, we'll be looking at him in West Ham's, teams like that. We'll probably look at James Ward-Prowse. But then again, if you asked me the same question this time last year about Højbjerg, I probably would have said the same thing. But so you never know, really. I don't think it'll be a massive fee, but yeah, I think he will be in the England squad. Probably not playing, but he probably won the 3rd or 4th choice centre mids. Just behind the likes of Henderson, Declan Rice, etc., etc. So I think he'll still be there, to be honest. I think if he was 2 or 3 years younger, probably will be getting the move. But I just think that age might just work against him now.
What do you think, Matt? Reunion with Højbjerg, perfect of a Tottenham midfield?
I'd pay you for that to happen, to be honest. Not a lot. I don't have a good job, but I think
you've got this one. What more can you want?
That's the problem. He's contracted till 2025 at Southampton. So yeah, I think the cards are firmly in Southampton's hand in this one, and they won't be forced into the sale. But in a year or two, I can imagine they will want to cash in on that, because at the end of the day, they are somewhat of a selling club.
That's fine. I was just curious because I think he's wonderful. I mean, these days you want certainty in football, and one thing that is certain is his delivery from set pieces. And I think a lot of clubs we've seen this year, that's been the key to getting a lot of these clubs, like Man United and West Ham, up the league, is consistent set piece takers. So nice segue there for Man United versus West Ham. So Man United just coming off I would say a fortunate 1-1 against a very good AC Milan side, and West Ham, who are defying a lot of critics. I'll hold my hand up myself. I didn't think they'd be anywhere near this, and they're there more than on merits. They've been fully deserving of where they are in the league. So, Oscar, how are you seeing this? Man United's home form is improving, but David Moyes' record against the big 6 sides isn't the best, but he is slowly starting to, I would say, turned quite a few West Ham fans more in his favour because you can't argue what they are fifth or sixth in the league now.
Yeah, I'm actually going to back West Ham here a bit. I think obviously Man United, I think there's always this kind of stat in terms of teams coming off Europa League football, not doing too great in the game after. I just think Man United put a pretty strong team out against Milan, and obviously they're going to have to play Milan in a couple of, next week as well. So I'm not sure they'll be totally on the ball here because they're quite comfortably in that top four. Obviously, Diallo's coming through, who to be honest, if I'm being honest, he looks a real player yesterday. First time I've seen him, play. I believe he's done quite well in the under-23s for them. And he looked really good, to be honest. He looked really, really good. A little bit, I think, obviously they've been talking about Sancho, but I think Diallo, in terms of what he's offered last night, you probably stick with him, to be fair. But yeah, I just think West Ham on that counter, in terms of having played them earlier in the week, you see how good they are defensively. Craig Dawson's been a revelation for them. Declan Rice, Souček providing real steel in that midfield. And then you got likes of Benrahma, Bowen, Antonio especially. You look at Maguire and Lindelof. I think against a physical striker, I think they tend to do okay, to be fair, especially Maguire. I think he tends to be okay against them. But against quick, strong strikers, I don't think there could be much worse of a matchup for Maguire to cope with. So I'm actually going to be a bit controversial there. I'm going to go 2-1 West Ham, but it'll be a good game either way. It'll be a good game.
A Leeds fan going against Man United. Who'd have thought it?
If anyone else in the top six, maybe it might not have gone that. But
that's almost as controversial as a Liverpool fan going against Man United. So, Matt, as Barry Devaney rightly points out, United do have injuries. They have started talking about them, but particularly in one area. It looks like Rashford and Cavani are definitely out. Martial looks like he went off with I think it was a thigh injury. So it'd be interesting to play up front now because it's probably going to be Greenwood through the middle, probably Dan James, and do they push Fernandes further forward, or Van der Beek if he's available or if he's even around? How are you seeing this game?
Well, I'm starting to agree slightly more with Oscar. Haven't heard that injury news. I know Van de Beek is definitely out for this one as well. I think Paul Pogba, Juan Mata, and Phil Jones are actually surprised that he still plays with United.
Is Phil Jones registered? Is Phil Jones registered for United though? There was something was he registered
anyway. It wouldn't surprise me if he's not. But I think United have the edge in this one purely because they're just higher up in that table, and I feel a team like West Ham coming to Old Trafford, it's going to be a very difficult situation for them. West Ham haven't won at Old Trafford since 2007, so that's 12 league games. Of course, they were relegated once or twice. 3 draws and 9 defeats in their last 12 trips to Old Trafford. But their record against United isn't actually that bad. United haven't done the double over West Ham in 8 years now, so it's one of those fixtures that kind of does bounce back and forth. And I feel as though that partnered with the inconsistency that United have shown this season, specifically at home, could offer West Ham some sort of hope in this one. But I'm looking at West Ham and how they've improved in the last couple of months, and a lot of that has been down to the goals and the contribution by Jesse Lingard, who's of course out of this one. He's not able to play from being on loan from Manchester United, so I think he'll be a big loss to the visitors for this one. And look, you talk about those absentees for Manchester United, but at the end of the day, they still have a fantastic team in there. And Martial in front of goal this season, especially in the last couple of weeks, hasn't been too good. Marcus Rashford has fluffed his lines a lot in front of goal as well. So as much as they will, them not being there will allow that West Ham defence to relax a bit more, especially when they are on the front foot. I do feel as though the creativity of Bruno Fernandes in that number 10 is the most important thing in that United side. He is the difference between where they were 18 months ago and where they are now. So I think he will be the key man for them there. And at Old Trafford, they've managed to put the ball in the back of the net a lot more lately than they have in the earlier parts of the season. They've scored 15 goals in their last 3 games there. And of course, 9 of those were against Southampton, but then 3 against Everton and 3 against Newcastle as well. Okay, I think it's a very good return.
Give us a score prediction then. What's your score prediction?
Go 3-1 United.
3-1, okay. Nagiga Mohammed has got 2-1 Man United. Kevin Sullivan is backing the Hammers to win 2-0. And here we go. Avo is backing the Hammers again to win 1-0. And Jonathan reckons, this is for you, Pete, Bruno is a hamstring waiting to happen, which is, if it happens, it's a bad thing for United. But in fairness to Bruno Fernandes, he has got a bit of what Salah and Mane have for Liverpool, and probably few plays for you, is he very rarely gets injured. He's very, very durable and tends to play through a lot. So I think if you're just hoping, Fernandes gets injured, they'll be out of it. I think you might be waiting a long time. He doesn't seem that type of player that picks up injuries. He's the one that can play through it and is just very durable.
And he needs to be as well, because he's vital to United. The record since he's been there is phenomenal, not just in scoring but in assists and also all-round play. He's the sort of player where I think if you were recording, say, passes completed, he would be very low on the passes completed, because he will make that one pass that you wouldn't expect to set up someone to, well, more than likely with their forwards, to put it in the back of the net. A little bit in I mentioned Youri Tielemans earlier. He's got that one killer pass where you forgive the not the mistakes, but the efforts of not world class 40-yard, 50-yard passes, but those little through balls. And if you watch Fernandes closely, you just notice how often he gives the ball away. But it's all because he's trying those nice little through balls. This game for me has draw written all over it. You've got two very informed teams in the Premier League, and both with issues going forward. The spark of West Ham, Jesse Lingard, not there obviously because he's still registered a United player on loan, so he's not there, and that's going to be an issue for West Ham. Going forward, I think they're going to be very solid throughout the rest of the pitch. We know exactly how they're going to play, how they're going to line up, apart from then in those positions going forward. And then United, what a problem they've got with Rashford being out, Cavani and also Martial. So again, their forward line missing. So you've got two informed teams, two very solid teams. And for me, it looks like both sides might get to a certain point in the game. With United, it's one eye looking on what's going to happen midweek in their return tie against Milan. And then West Ham, if the game is at stalemate or maybe at 1-1, my prediction, they look and go, actually, how about we just hang on for this point? It's going to be a really good point for our top four efforts. So I can see this maybe playing out into a draw. It looks to be a good game on paper. I'm looking forward to this game. I'm going to go 1-1. I think there's proper issues with United going forward. West Ham defence is very good, and I just wonder how West Ham are going to line up, because Ben Rama, a player I think is exceptional and will have, I think, a very good season, probably next season. It's maybe taken him longer than I thought to bed in at West Ham. He might be missing as well. So there are problems for both sides. I'm going to go 1-1, but it's a good game on paper. I'm looking forward to this one.
Cool. I am probably surprised Mo. I still think Man United will find a way. They have, I would say this year, that seems to be why they are where they are, is games against the top six, City game being the exception, they haven't been great, but anyone outside the traditional top six, they are finding a way. May not always be pretty, but they always, to me, seem to find a way in these sort of games, and they just know how to grind it out. So I think United will pick this 2-1. I think this is sort of game where the Fernandes factor really tells, and I think for West Ham not having a Lingard, is that spark they probably were missing at one point in the season, and I just think he's a big loss for them. Cool, right? So before we go to another game, a slightly new feature we're going to bring into it now is why do you love your club? So I'm going to start. What do you guys in a minute? Just sort of talk about what made you fall in love with your club. You know, like your first game, the favourite game you've ever been to, and what do you miss about a match day? And I'll say about a match day because I know not all of us are lucky enough to go to the games. I go some, but not all of them. So what do you miss about match day? So Pete, I'll go to you. What was your made you love Leicester? How did you fall in love with them?
Well, it's slightly different to say Tottenham, Liverpool as well. Leeds, it would be similar, but Leicester, as we know, it's a one-club city and it's a one-club county as well. I'm in the county rather than the city itself. So first of all, it's fairly easy then if you're in Leicestershire to then support Leicester. Everyone pretty much does. Family support Leicester. But for me, it was... Filbert Street was such a strange ground, if you all remember Filbert Street. And at night, because you had two very small stands at Filbert Street, the stand opposite the camera and also the Filbert Street end were very, very small. In that corner was the biggest floodlight pylon you've ever seen in your life. It was huge. So if you're walking towards the ground, you're walking through terrace streets, seeing this huge pylon. Well, if you're 8 or 9 years old, that's one of the most magical things you can ever see in football. And then a huge stand appears. So it was instant, really. You go to football, you see that side, and that's it. And my first game was live on ITV, played Wolves. Remember nothing of the game apart from 20 minutes before kickoff. Some club officials turned up, and a couple of rows in front basically picked up this guy and took him down the stand. I do remember that. Next thing we know, the guy's running out to the post-horn gallop wearing the goalkeeping jersey of Leicester because the goalkeeper's done his back in the changing room and he's making his debut. And that was Russell Holt, who went on and played for a number of clubs and famously got arrested for curb crawling in Derby. It was, and so he was known as the hot dog kid because he was eating a hot dog. So you don't forget that sort of thing. That was my first game. And when it comes to Leicester, they went to Wembley 7 times in the 90s. I thought Leicester played at Wembley every summer for one game, whether it was a cup final or whether it was as a playoff final to get to the Premier League. It's not hard to really fall in love with your club when you go into Wembley all the time.
Was that your back-to-back League Cup finals?
We played in 3 League Cup finals in 4 years. And then also we went to Wembley in the playoff final where we lost to Blackburn, we lost to Swindon, we beat Derby, we beat Palace, all with 4 of those within 5 years. It's crazy. So end of the day, it was just Leicester in the 90s is an unbelievable story. Virtue the same as obviously what's happened since. And the favourite game, it's got to have to be something recent. When we got promoted to the Premier League, we played Manchester United at home in an amazing game. We won 5-3. Vardy scored his first Premier League goal. The United goals were exceptional. Di Maria scored a fantastic chip. Van Persie scored. But the game was just unbelievable. 5-3 Leicester, Vardy's first goal in the Premier League. That game, and we said at the time, no matter what happens with this club, there'll never be a better game than that. The next season was unbelievable, obviously, and there were many, many highlights. Champions League win against Sevilla at home, probably the highlight of that. But that 5-3, never been beaten. Never been beaten.
I've got to admit, one of my favourite Leicester games was the 3-3 against Arsenal. The one where Bergkamp scores, arguably one of the greatest goals I've seen score. Forget your Newcastle. If you've not seen it, YouTube, Dennis Bergkamp. He made Casey Keller look silly. And Casey Keller is not a bad keeper. The
game was 2-1 going into injury time and it ended 3-3. Steve Walsh scored in the 97th minute and then had a fight with Ian Wright. But he scored a hat-trick, Bergkamp, and 2 of the goals finished first and second in goal of the month and I think first and third in goal of the season in the same game. But no, just absolutely fantastic. And just one last thing. The loudest cheer and the loudest noise I've ever heard and probably ever will was when Vardy scored to make it the 11th goal, break the record against United. That noise when he scored, because it was all about Vardy, all about him breaking that record, that noise will never be beaten because it was nuts. But anyway, there we go. Yeah.
Quick question for you, Peter Blake asks, is Leicester a football or rugby city? Because to be fair, I don't know. Didn't know it was a thing. Brilliant
question. I think Peter Blake probably might know. Leicester is a football city and is a rugby county. So if you go outside of the city, you've got the Tigers, who are one of the biggest clubs in world football. And Welford Road, if you've ever been to the King Power or Filbert Street and you've gone on the train, you walk past Welford Road. Some people think it's Filbert Street because it's a big stadium itself. But generally, football city and rugby for the county. So, but yeah, brilliant.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Pete. Right, a couple of quick fire ones. The game of the weekend: Palace versus West Brom. Keep this brief. Oscar, what do you think?
I think the first thing, as soon as you said Palace and West Brom, it just said 0-0 straight away to me.
Let's go with that then.
I'm going to go with that. Zaha's not back, is he?
Probably not, no.
0-0 then. Palace don't score without him. 0-0 all the way.
That's fine. Matt, what are we going for?
1-0 Palace.
Cool. Pete, what are we going for?
I would normally go 0-0, but I'm just going to go for a West Brom win here. I'm just going to go 1-0. But I'm going to go no goal scorer because they'll probably score through an own goal knowing them. 1-0 just to the Baggies.
I am going to go... Oh, there you go. Someone's put Zaha's back on the bench. I'm going to go 1-0 Palace as a winner. Because he's probably the only one in that, and both sides has got actual real quality. And quite frankly, I just want Big Sam to get relegated very, very quickly. Everton versus Burnley. What we go for, Oscar?
2-0 Everton. 2-0 Everton. Okay. Back him on that.
Okay, Pete, what are you going for?
I'm going to go for. I'm going to go 2-1 Everton. I fancy Everton, but I'm a big fan of Burnley. I've said on here a number of times they're my second favourite club or team, should I say? I like the way that they go about things in their own style, And I think they can put it to Everton, but I think Everton will have too much quality. So 2-1 Everton.
That's good. Stephen Dunn, if it's 5-4 Palace, I also go, mate, I'll eat my hat. I'll love it if it is, because that's what you want, an entertaining game. Matt, what are we saying for the Everton game? Bad news for Everton is Decore now is out for 8 to 10 weeks, which is that's a blow, because I mean he has been a really good signing. I'm surprised actually no one signed from Watford sooner. So that is a big. I think that's a big loss for Everton. So what are you going for?
2-0 Everton written down as well. Sorry,
cool. I have 2-1. Okay, and the last quick fire one: Fulham versus City.
Fulham City. I'll go. It's got to be Man City, hasn't it? I think this has got goals for me. I like Fulham. I like the way they. I think the manager's exceptional. The way he's moved through this season, changing their style, and also just reacting to things, reacting to the season, not panicking. They've got a good team, but I think they'll come stuck here. I'm going to go 3-1 City, but again, a good game. I think it's going to be close for a while, but City, their class will tell. 3-1.
That's fine. Matt, what are you saying?
2-1 City.
Okay, Oscar?
I agree. I think pretty comfortable for City in the end. Might be 2 late goals, 3-0 City overall. Yeah,
I have 3-0 as well. So stick with you, Oscar. Let's talk about Leeds then. Why do you love Leeds? What got you into Leeds? What was your first game? Tell me about Leeds.
Right, well, quite a long story. I'm actually from Southport, which is closer to Liverpool than it is Leeds, to be fair. So
it's very close, yeah.
Yeah, it is a lot closer to Liverpool. But, I mean, from a family, really, of Evertonians and Liverpool fans, the odd City fan, it was only really me and my dad who were Leeds fans. My dad got me into it, took me to a few games early doors. It was kind of during the Champions League time when he started getting me watching games on TV, trying to get me into football. Mark Viduka, a certain 4-3 game against Liverpool will always be on my mind.
We don't talk about that.
But growing up, honestly, watching that, because Mark Viduka was everything, like the hero, everything was just like Mark Viduka in that lot, honestly, after that moment. And it's just certain moments stick with you, and that's one of them. I remember him scoring at Highbury against probably what the best Arsenal team there was in terms of just keep us up. So a lot of glorious moments. But my first game was actually quite a few years after that, to be fair. He got me watching games on TV. But my dad worked away quite a lot, to be fair, when I was younger. So my first game was actually in the Championship. So I've never seen Leeds actually play live in the Premier League, which is quite depressing, to be fair. And I thought this season might be where I break that duck, but not quite. Hopefully next season anyway. But first game...
You'd like to think it'd be next season, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, hopefully. We'll probably get relegated, and then I'll be able to go back to the games. We'll have Neil Warnock back in charge, and... honestly,
could be worse. Could be Big Sam.
Oh no, Warnock's worse. Honestly,
I don't know.
I've had Warnock manage my club. Honestly, you just don't wish it on anyone.
I think Warnock's still on the pitch at Swansea, isn't he? He's still marching around there.
Still moaning, still complaining.
Red Steve says Southport is very, very South Yorkshire. Was that about right?
No, not at all. It is actually in Merseyside.
I know. I think he's possibly taking the mickey.
Okay. Anyway,
so what was your favourite game? What was your favourite goal or game?
Favourite goal or game? Well, it's got to be Leeds 2, Bristol Rovers 1, which sounds like a very boring game, but in the context, it was the game that got us into the Championship. It was our first steps back up the league ladder, and you'd obviously go on about games last season, but it's got to be that one because that was the moment where there was belief again amongst the fan base. That whole season, we beat Man United away in the Cup. We drew at Tottenham. We played really well against Liverpool in the game where I think David Ungog got the winner, if you remember him. Then I think Gerrard came on that game. We had a really unbelievable season. And then we almost threw it away from like a 10-point lead in March. We then dropped to third in the middle of April. And we thought, here we go, Leeds United again. We're losing the playoffs now. We go 1-0 down. Sorry, no, in fact, I need to tell the whole story. 0-0. 4 of the teams can get promoted on the day. Everyone else scores. We're 0-0 in the game. And then Max Gradle decides to stamp on the Bristol Rovers left-back's foot. Gets himself sent off. So we go in at half-time, 0-0. Everyone else is winning with 10 men. Then we go one down, 2 minutes into the start of the second half. And you're thinking, oh, yeah, great. Here we go. Leeds United again. And then Johnny Alston comes off the bench, Leeds born, local lad, plenty of heroic clutch moments. And that was the biggest one. Scores an absolute belter from 30 yards out. What I'd call probably a Gerrard moment in terms of the way he just struck the ball. It was just like a golf shot. It was just always rising. Back of the net, 1-1. Then Jermaine Beckford gets the winner, and we hold out. But that's definitely the favourite game. That was just an unbelievable occasion in terms of where you think Leeds are going to throw it away. We're also used to Leeds throwing it away around that time. There was so much Chelsea at the club, which is all you can refer it to as. Ken Bates, Gwyn Williams, all these people, just Chelsea. Horrific times, but we got promoted. And we went back on our step back up the leagues. But the first ever game was a 3-3 draw with Brighton.
Brighton scored 3.
What, sorry?
Brighton scored 3. There's a novelty.
Yeah, no. It was,
the XG was off the scale.
It was. I don't know if XG was a thing then, but it probably wasn't. But I think we scored 2 own goals. That's why, we scored 2 own goals.
That's definitely wrecking the XG, that.
Yeah, that's the only way Brighton scored 3.
Cool. The other quickfire games is Leicester at home to Sheffield United. So quickfire, what scores are we going for here? Matt?
I think Sheffield United will rue letting Wilder go, whether it was mutual, he walked, whatever it was. I'm going to say 3-0 Leicester.
Okay. Oscar?
They've won 7 of the last 14 games before Wilder. If he was sacked, it seems crazy in that kind of sense. 1-0 Leicester.
1-0 Leicester. Okay. Pete, what are we going for?
I'm going to go for Leicester. I hopefully get Vardy back on the goal scoring trail. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it against, because he's a Sheffield Wednesday fan, against Sheffield United. You would always fear a new manager bounce, etc., etc. I think this is completely different circumstances to any normal manager leaving. It's problems with the club higher up, nothing to do with him or the players, etc., etc. I'm going to go for Leicester. I'm going to go for 2-0. And we solidify our top 4 place. But I wouldn't be surprised. Wilder, to me, it looks like Wilder might well go back to Sheffield United. I think he's gone now. And if they're struggling next season, come Christmas, it looks to me a Wilder appointment around December. Similar actually to Nigel Pearson, who left Leicester and then came back and obviously did very well. But I think this is not the end of Wilder and Sheffield United. It might be just a bit of a timeout.
Yeah, it's strange that a team bottom the league, you're thinking sacking the manager is no great shock, but you sort of look at that Sheffield United squad thinking it was always going to struggle this year, probably realistically, especially with the amount of centre-backs they've lost and the strikers who can't score. It's never a good combination. You just wonder whether, I don't know if Wilder, has he just thought this is as far as I can go? Perhaps he doesn't think he's got the energy to do another rebuild. I know he's a Sheffield boy, but there has been whispers that he could be in line for Celtic. Which for him is a big for him. You know, that's a big challenge for him. That's a chance for him to test himself in Europe as well, because Celtic will be at least in Europa League qualifiers. So for him, that's a different challenge. It is going, would his style of football work when you're one of the favourites to win every week, and he's got to balance European football, which for him, do you know what, could be another string to his bow for when he comes back to Sheffield United, or potentially tries another club in England. So, yeah, I was surprised he went. I thought if he was going to go, he'd leave in the summer and they'd just sort of say, look, we'll shake hands here. We'll go a different direction. He can try something new. Okay, so we'll go to what probably is the game of the weekend. It is the North London derby, Spurs versus Arsenal. Arsenal, who are a weird side. They get a fantastic win against informed Leicester and then throw it away against Burnley. And Tottenham, you're very similar. You're on a good run for, I know you told me three wins in a row, but you still, like most, have got the odd rick in you. And despite the fact you're in this good form, as I saw when I went on the All Leeds show, not a lot of Tottenham fans are happy with what you've got, despite the fact you're still within a better shout than most for top 4. You're still in the Europa League. You're already in a cup final. Football may be boring, but it's effective. So before I ask you, Matt, we'll go on to the others because I know you're down to talk about it. So, Oscar, North London derby. Let's be fair. this will bite me in the arse, I'm sure. But North London derbies, they tend to be high scoring. I think they say it's one of the highest scoring fixtures. It just seems to be who could outscore who in these games. They all seem to be quite entertaining. It's generally one of the few derbs I actually enjoy watching.
I mean, some of the defending, if we're being honest, in some of these North London derbies, it's absolutely laughable at times, isn't it, if we're being honest? But look, it does make for entertaining games. I think Gareth Bale, oh my word, how well is he playing at the minute? I think he's playing the best football he's played in a long time, probably 3 or 4 years, to be fair, since he's played this well. Obviously, you've then got the small matter of...
It's probably the most games he's played in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, that's true as well. I think there's no coincidence the golf courses are closed. He's a bit more focused in training. I think there's no coincidence there at all, to be honest. I think as soon as that 29th of March hits and the golf course is open again, yeah, his form's going to go back down the drain. But anyway,
you're nearly in my good books there, Oscar. Nearly in the good books.
But hang on, wait till the next thing I say. To be fair, Kane and Son. Look, the good thing from a Tottenham point of view is the goals are not just going to have to come from them. You got Bale, contributing. I think even Lucas Moura, since he's gone into the 10 role, has looked a lot more effective. I think his game's a lot simpler now. He's just driving into space. I don't think he's ever really been an out-and-out winger. I think he's always been someone who can kind of drifting in and out of games. So he looks a lot more effective. I think obviously they've started to put Ndombele a bit deeper alongside Højbjerg, and it's an attacking move off Mourinho. That you don't often see Mourinho trying to trust Ndombele to do the defensive part of the game, but he seems to have worked so far. Whether he's going to do the same thing against Arsenal, who knows? But I think one big factor in this game is Europa League. That might sound crazy, but both teams have got heavily invested in that Europa League because, let's be honest, for Arsenal especially, that is their best chance in Champions League football, is winning the whole tournament. I'm not saying they're going to win the whole tournament, but I think for me, it's more realistic they win that than finishing the top 4 at this moment in time. And possibly you could say the same for Tottenham, but probably less so Tottenham. So I think might be half an eye on that from both teams. I don't think, in terms of fitness, the fact both teams played quite strong sides. But I'm still going to back Tottenham here. I think you look at it defensively, both teams, not great defensively in terms of the back fours. And it's purely a case of, in terms of the attacking units, Saka, Aubameyang, Willian, etc. versus Bale, Kane, Son. I back Tottenham's 3 or 4 more than we do Tottenham and more than we do Arsenal's to produce on the day. But it could go either way. I'm going to go with 2-1 Tottenham.
Okie dokie. Pete, how are you feeling North London derby?
I completely agree when it comes to the Europa League, but I think when you then play against each other in such a big game for these two sides, and also their positions in the league more looking towards Tottenham because they're in very good form, and also I still think they're huge players in the top 4 argument towards the end of the season. I think Spurs, the way that they're playing, if they can keep this run of football, I can't see any reason why they can't be slap bang involved in that top 4. Now, Gareth Bale, it's no real surprise to anyone that Gareth Bale is good at football. He is one of the best players in world football when he's fully fit and completely in tune and focused with what's going on around him. Gareth Bale was one of the only very few Premier League players for me, apart from if you're an Arsenal fan. He kind of bypassed any kind of loyalties towards teams because when he was at Spurs originally, he was a player playing such a brand of football and so well that you turned and tuned in to watch Gareth Bale. And if your team were playing against Tottenham in that time, you went there going, Gareth Bale's playing, even though you're supporting your own side. That doesn't happen often. That really doesn't happen. I remember only very few players, Cantona, Matt Le Tissier, fully enough, when you played Southampton in the 90s, you said, I'm going to go and watch Leicester, say, but, Le Tissier is playing for them. There's only very few players, and Bale was one of them. He's been just extraordinary, hasn't he? Absolutely extraordinary in recent weeks. I think this game spells a lot of trouble for Arsenal. I don't think Arsenal are very good. I can completely understand what they're doing regarding the manager. I don't think you can really judge him at all until next season. But I do think that Arsenal are there for the taking. I think they sold their best goalkeeper. I think they've got problems at the back. I think Pepe, even though his best game for the club probably was against Leicester last week or a couple of weeks back, I think he's one of the biggest wastes of money in the Premier League. I don't think he's very good at all. He missed an open goal against Burnley. I think Spurs can go there and do a proper number on Arsenal. They've got the bit between their teeth. Mentioning Gareth Bale, Kane's in tremendous goal-scoring form. I know he had ice on his knee. I wouldn't be surprised if that was completely nonsense and just a bit of a ploy there, just to put some ice on your knee, get them talking about it, and you'll run out. I can't see Arsenal really troubling Spurs unless something dramatic happens early on. I think Spurs are not only going to win this game, but are going to win comfortably. Not just from that on, but I think they're going to win comfortably. And also, I think if they go up 1 or 2 goals in the first half, I don't think they'll be looking at what happens in the Europa League in the week, because I think they'll want to score 4 or even 5. And guess what? I don't think it will be a surprise, actually. I'm going to go for a big away win, and I'm going to go 4-1 to Spurs. Bale and Kane, why not scoring a brace apiece, going for the hat-trick, and Bale gets taken off after an hour and wrapped in cotton wool.
Well, that's just made Matt very, very happy, so I'm not going to let him talk about it now.
I wouldn't be surprised if you did that, Chris. I'll be perfectly honest.
Yeah, see, I understand what everyone's saying about Arsenal, but my thing with Spurs has always been, I don't trust your right back, Aurier, although he's improved, I don't trust him, and I still don't trust your keeper. I think that's, and me and Matt spoke about it, we've joked about, because obviously my own club's got similar problems, but I just don't trust that. Defensively, midfield and attack-wise, you can't fault Spurs. You really can't. I've gone for a 2-2 just because all logic says Tottenham win. But I've seen so many of these North London derbies where they're just berserk. And the one thing Arsenal can do, they can score. Aubameyang and Saka can cause teams problems. Unfortunately for them, unfortunately for Arsenal, the defenders they've got can cause their own problems. And I agree that they probably sold their better keeper. I do think, looking now, why they sold him to Villa, I'll never know. And you can tell by the way he's left, he's not happy that he was sold either. I think he thought he'd done enough to get his place over Leno. So for me, I'm going for a Grizz 2-2. Okay, go on then, Matt. I'll let you wax lyrical about Spurs.
Well, do you know what? If you had told me there's going to be Arsenal slander and Spurs praise in this podcast, I'd have been on here long before now. But look, I remember I was on here a few months ago. Pete was actually on and he got 99% of the games right. So I'm putting all my money on 4-1 win now to Spurs. But look, Chris, I said it to you earlier. Spurs, we're the best team in the world. No, I'm joking. We're the 4th team in the Premier League at the moment. And as crazy that is to say, as I said to you, Chris, we've the longest winning run in the Premier League of any team right now with 3. Chelsea are the only other team who've actually won more than 1 consecutive game, which is crazy, but just goes to show the competitive nature of the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, let's be clear though. City have just come off a win of 21 wins in a row. So let's be clear.
It was how quiet he said the 3 bit. It was what you said, run the longest run. One,
you play 3, and 2, you're like, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. City do another long run.
They have scored 4 goals twice in those 3 as well, so I'm going to go for 4 again. You see?
Oh, I'd love to see that. But look, Arsenal have never gone 6 games without beating Spurs. It's been 5. Jose, he's always here to set records. He's the first Spurs manager to have won his first 2 North London derbies in the Premier League, and I agree that form, logic, everything dictates that Spurs will win this game. But in a derby, form goes out the window, logic goes out the window. It's 90 minutes of football, 11 men against 11 men who hate each other and have fans who want their bragging rights. I think it's going to be a classic North London encounter. I think it's going to be end to end. I personally don't see Spurs winning comfortably, and I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't win the game. But as a Spurs fan, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't think we're going to win it. For Gareth Bale to be in the form that he's been in recent weeks, I think is for any Spurs fan, it's probably the best thing that's happened this season. Yeah, we're in a Carabao Cup final, but to have Gareth Bale back in North London at his absolute best, something like 9 goals in 8 games or 9 goals in 5 games, some ridiculous stat like that. He's been absolutely incredible. And it was Kane and Son earlier in the season. Now it's Kane and Bale getting 2 apiece in that win against Palace. We're playing outstanding attacking football, as Oscar alluded to. And Dembele's back in that double pivot with Højbjerg, which I do think exposes our right back a little bit more because we're lacking that cover from Moussa Sissoko. But it does show that attacking intent that Jose has been trying to instill in this team in the last couple of weeks. And it's working. We're getting those goals. We're getting forward. We've won 5 in a row in all competitions. Look, 2 of those were against Wolfsberger and Dinamo Zagreb. But as I always say, you can only beat what's in front of you. And I think Spurs have just been outstanding at that in recent weeks. Now, the biggest concern I have is our away form. We won our first 4 away games of the season. We've only won 2 of the 9 since. We scored 11 in our first 2 away games. We scored 10 goals in the 11 since. So on the road, we've been really poor. I think one of the few teams who actually have that worry this season because home advantage seems to have gone out the window. But I'm not going to sit here and predict anything other than the Spurs win. I think Harry Kane will be fit. As Pete said, there's concern with that ice in the knee after the game against Zagreb, but it's just Jose Mourinho mind games. I think Bale starts, Kane starts, Son starts, Lucas in that 10, as Oscar said, has been absolutely incredible. Højbjerg and Dembele in that double pivot, Reguilon and Aurier at fullback, Davinson Sanchez and Oliver in centre back, Lloris in goal. Every single day of the week that beats that Arsenal team. An Arsenal team who I think has been outside of the top four for quite a while, but now is the first time you can look at that Arsenal squad and say they don't deserve to be in the top four. All the while it's been underperforming, poor managers, but I think now they're where they belong. They're the second best team in North London. They're a mid-table Premier League team. North London is white, and Spurs are going to prove that with a 3-1 win on Sunday.
Right, so you feel blessed of that. You've been that's got my chest for ages. Cool.
Yeah, cheers, Chris. I'm off.
That's all right. Sorry, bit of admin for me. If you guys could smash the like button, that would be most appreciated. And we are still on the race to 10K. So if you can subscribe, that would be most appreciated. We are doing a giveaway at 10K, which I'm told is quite a big prize. When we get close to 10K, you will actually find out what the prize is. So please tell family, tell friends. It's not all Liverpool centric. We do try and do shows like this where we could try and spread it out across the league and give a few different views. And you'll see it flying along the bottom. Please don't forget our Keen Strong work that we do at the moment. This is you can find it on our Twitter page, and so there's a GoFundMe page there. If you can give to the Keen cause, please do. If you can't, please just reshare it. It'll always be appreciated. Okay, one more quick fire game. Leeds versus Chelsea, which should be interesting. What do we think, Matt?
I have 2-1 Chelsea written down, which I know Oscar will probably hate me for, but
sorry, you made me copy notes, I think.
Well, I said it first, so I win. Yeah, I think Chelsea's under Tuchel have been too good. I think they're playing really good football, defensively sound. Patrick Bamford missed the most big chances in the Premier League this season with 17. And I just think Chelsea will have too much for Leeds in this one, so I'll go 2-1.
Cool. Pete?
Big fan of Leeds, big fan of the way they play football, and I think Rafinha is, unfortunately for Leeds fans, I can't see any reason why some of the real big boys in the league just don't splash out all the money that Leeds want for him in the summer. I can't see him being at Leeds next year unless they... I can see them having to turn down some big bids. Big fan of Leeds. That being said, Chelsea are too solid, too good at the moment. Leeds out of form. I'm going to... I think Leeds might score, so I'm going to go for 2-1 to Chelsea. But unfortunately, just one team in such good form and one team bang out of form at the moment. But so 2-1 Chelsea, but another good-looking game this weekend.
Go on then, Oscar. You're going to take this, or are you going to tell me your boys are going to do it?
Look, you look at it logically. You're going to have to go Chelsea all day long. But the only thing I'd have to say is, in terms of how Chelsea set up, in terms of the 3-4-2-1, I don't think they faced a team like us so far this season. It's certainly under Tuchel. I'm just thinking the fact that if Marcus Alonso is playing left wing back or Ben Chilwell, I quite fancy Luke Hay and Rafinha to combine on that right-hand side and cause a few problems, to be fair, and upset Chelsea a little bit. I think as well, you got obviously Jorginho, Kante. I just think our press, I think certainly Jorginho is someone who needs a lot of time on the ball. I think if we're pressing him right from the minute go, really, we can cause a few problems. I'm going to go 2-2. It's going to be a really tough game for us. If we can see first, we're in big trouble. We're seriously going to be in big trouble. If we can see first in that game, we'll get hammered, but I think we will score first, personally. I think we will be on it. Last couple of games, I thought against West Ham, we started quite well, and then we conceded the first goal against a run of play, and West Ham take over after that, really. And we bounced back a little bit second half, but it's not enough. So I'm going to go with Desmond. I'm going to go another 2-2 there.
That's fine. I have 2-1 Chelsea because I think Chelsea will probably start Giroud and play on your set piece.
Oh, that's
issues.
That worst nightmare stuff if Giroud plays.
That's who I think he'll play, because I think he'll save Werner for the Champions League against Madrid. So that I'm going 2-1. So Matt, coming back to you, because we haven't talked about why you love Spurs and what got you into Spurs. I mean, I know why you love Spurs because I know it was to wind your dad up, and it's stuck. But go on. For those who don't know, how did you get into being an Irishman who loves Spurs, and what was your first game?
Well, in terms of the question, why do I love Spurs? I ask myself that question every single day, but here we are. Just to touch on how I got into Spurs. My dad's a Liverpool fan. He comes from a family. There's United, Arsenal, Liverpool fans all in there, and you won't find many Spurs fans in Ireland. I work in Stats Performers, basically Opta's offices here in Limerick, and there's maybe 100 of us working in the soccer side of things, and there's 3 Spurs fans. One of which has actually only joined us fairly recently, so it's not a very common thing even among a group of big Spurs fans. But my dad's sister moved to England because all coming from Ireland, and she married a Spurs fan there, and he came over for my communion when I would have been 8 or 9 years of age. And I think Liverpool had just beaten West Ham in the FA Cup final or the League Cup final, whatever it was, the week beforehand. And as a child, my dad always put a Liverpool jersey on me. He said, "You're a Liverpool fan." He brought me to Anfield one time where they lost 4-1 to Arsenal, which I think is hilarious. And my uncle came up to me and he said, "I'll give you £5 if you tell your dad you support Spurs." So I went up to my dad. I was like, "Oh, I'm a Tottenham fan now." And it annoyed him so much. I just kept on doing it, and I kept on doing it. And eventually it just stuck. And here I am today. What is it? 13 years later, still crying myself to sleep every night after watching Spurs. But it's, we've had some fantastic times. And my first Spurs game, I went to 2 games it would have been 2009. So I was only 8 years old. So I don't remember too much about it. But I think we drew 1-1 with Portsmouth. Darren Bent missed a last minute winner in that one. And we drew, I think, B City 2-1 actually as well. But the first game that I actually remember, played Everton in August of 2017, I want to say. 0-0 draw at White Hart Lane. But it was the best day of my life. It's the first game that I actually do remember going to a game. Kane had a goal disallowed for offside, and then Lukaku missed a sitter in the last minute. So it's not the best game to have been at. But since then, I've been at. We beat Pep Guardiola 2-0. It was his first defeat in English football. I was there at White Hart Lane. It's the last ever game at White Hart Lane. We beat United 2-1. A crazy, crazy day. Honestly, a memory that will live with me forever, and something I'm so grateful and lucky to have been at. We beat Dortmund 3-0 in the Champions League under the Wembley lights. I was at that one as well. But if we're talking my favourite game at Spurs, there are quite a few contenders. We beat City in 2009. Peter Crouch scoring a late goal to get us into the Champions League. We've had some good wins against Arsenal, which are always going to be enjoyable. But it's hard not to talk about that Champions League semi-final away to Ajax. Look, we're not touching on the game that came after that, but to have lost that first game. No, you won't. You won't. Thanks.
Still got mine to go yet.
Oh, damn it. But look, to have lost that first leg against Ajax at the Spurs Stadium, we're of course new at that ground as well, only had a few games there. It was Donny van de Beek scored the goal there. There was a bit of hope, I suppose, going into that second leg, so we'd had quite a few comebacks in the tournament already. We were down and out after 3 games in the group stage, and of course the last minute winner conceded to City, eventually ruled out. But then to go 2-0 down in Amsterdam, I remember I was in a pub watching it with my dad and my brother who doesn't even follow soccer. Or football, sorry, I'm thinking Ireland here, I'm saying soccer, I mean football. But I remember at half time, my brother, he was looking at some betting site. He said it's 20-1 for Spurs to win. Well, I put a tenner on it. I said, why would you do that? Let's not do this. Let's just have a meal and get out of here and enjoy the night. And then Lucas scored, and then Lucas scored again, and the hope was creeping in. And I honestly, I like to think I'm good, I'm well spoken and all that stuff. But I cannot put into words the elation and the feeling that I felt when that third goal went in. And I haven't been a Spurs fan for long, but I feel like there's been a lot of moments throughout my 10 years, I suppose, remembering Spurs and all that stuff where things have gone well. But that particular moment was just, I'll never be able to describe it, and I don't think I'll ever feel anything like that until we go one step further and do lift a Champions League trophy, which probably won't happen.
You never know. So, I think I got into football quite late. I probably only started following football when I was about 10. I think before that, I'd have a kickabout with my mates, but I never used to watch the games. I was just more interested in having a kickabout with my mates. So my first game, which having heard what yours was, makes me feel really old now, was 1994. A friend of the family. I know. A friend of the family, Tony Poole. His son was away at university, so so he took me to my first game, which was Liverpool beat Southampton 3-1. I got to sit in the famous Kop, which I've only ever done the Kop a few times, so I was probably about 10, 11. So that was quite an experience, being in the Kop. Saw Rush score 2, and Fowler scored the 3rd, which still to this day bugs me that Rush had 2 goals and he gave the penalty to Fowler instead of taking his hat trick. It never did get me head around that, but that was just how Ian Rush was. He wasn't a penalty taker. In terms of, I think the best atmosphere I've ever been to was probably the 2005 Champions League semi-final. It was a crap game, but in terms of atmosphere, I've never experienced an atmosphere like it. I unfortunately didn't go to the Barca game. That's probably the best game I've seen at Anfield on the telly. But the best game I've physically been to in terms of atmosphere was probably the 2005 Champions League final. The best game I physically went to was, I was very lucky to go to the FA Cup final against West Ham, which was the craziest game I've ever been to, where you think you've lost it twice, and then it's probably the best FA Cup final goal I've ever seen, and I nearly killed me brother-in-law celebrating. So that went down well. Those were the best goals. That was the best goals. You get overexcited, but that was brilliant. So on that high point of that, we're now going to talk about current Liverpool versus Wolves. Liverpool actually off the back of a win, which is it's not often I've said that in the last probably 6-7 weeks, but a solid win against a decent Bundesliga side, and from my point of view, it keeps the season alive and it gives the players now a bit of a stick or a carrot, depending on your point of view, to get themselves back into gear a little bit in the league to play for a quarter-final place, whoever we play. So, Pete, how are you seeing this one?
It's a strange game for me because it's got to that stage of the season where, because of where we are in the league, I then look below and go, which of the teams are we going to be challenging really for the Champions League? And ultimately, it will be Chelsea, it will be Liverpool, and it will be Tottenham. So I look at this game thinking, is there a chance Liverpool can not pick up 3 points? So then you look at the opposition and they're playing Wolves, a team who, if you could stop the season now, Wolves will go, yep, we can stop the season now, move on to next season, Jimenez back, etc., signing some players who are actually more than 20 years old and maybe have even played in the Premier League before. I think this game has the hallmarks of a game that's just going to trundle along. But ultimately, I think the quality of Liverpool will tell late on. I can see them winning a 0-0, which is what I'm going to go for. I think Wolves, overall, as a club, are in a fantastic position. The whole setup, the manager, etc. And it just shows you having ultimately quite a poor season by their standards is still very solid. A lot of very promising players there. And yet it's been a disappointing season for them. It just shows you what club Wolves are. So I think overall, I think Liverpool will just ultimately have too much and they're going to win by a 0-0.
Okay. I think this is Rajiv. Rajiv Kumar points out Liverpool have won 5 of the last 6 away games, if you count Leipzig. But in the league, I think we are won 4 out of our last 5. In fact, there's only the Leicester capitulation is the last away game we've lost. And you wouldn't think Liverpool of previous years, our away form is actually probably the only shining light at the moment.
What happened in that game? What happened later on?
We do what we've been doing recently, which is horrendous defending.
I saw Pete starting to smile there as you mentioned that game, and I knew something was coming.
Hey, listen, you can't hide from it. If it happened, it happened. So I'm not going to hide from it.
It was just chaotic, wasn't it? It was just crazy. 7 minutes?
It's probably Alisson's worst 2 weeks for Liverpool, where he managed to kick all the balls to City, and then he had the rush of blood again and tried to kill Kabak for no real reason. It's not Kabak's fault. If a keeper comes flying out, if a keeper flies out that far, you get everything. That's what I was always told. So, anyway, your guy does this quite a lot anyway. So, are we going on for Tottenham? What do you think?
For the Wolves Liverpool?
Yeah, go on.
I think two things that for me sums up Liverpool's season. The first one is they had to go to Hungary to get a home win. And the second one is twice. The second one is they started the season with 3 centre-backs and now 7 of them are injured. It's been a crazy, tumultuous season for Liverpool, but as you were saying, on the road recently, their form has been quite good, and they have a terrific record against Wolves. I think Wolves have lost their last 8 league games against Liverpool. Their only longer run is losing 9 in a row against Brighton, and I think it was back in the 80s. So it's not a fixture that has been very friendly to Wolves in recent years, and this season hasn't been very friendly to them either. I think along with Southampton and Sheffield United have been probably the teams that have fallen away the most in this season. And you're looking at Adama Traore, not a single goal contribution this year. Of course, a horrific injury suffered by Raul Jimenez. No one can control that, but you do have to look at the effect that's had on them, and they're struggling to put the ball in the back of the net. And Liverpool, for all their problems, I think do still have a really, really strong team. Like if you look at that team that lost to Fulham last week, the defence, yes, was really weak, but or maybe not the Fulham game, because you rotated after that. The game before that, the defence is really weak, but the midfield trio and the attacking three as well were really strong players and should be enough to go out and win games to you. And I think it will carry you through in this one. I think Wolves just, like I said, just haven't really got going. I feel like it's going to be one of those games where they'll huff and they'll puff, but without too much happening. And I can see Liverpool getting one. I think Salah, as bad as he is, he'll always put his name on the score sheet. I think maybe a goal from midfield as well for Liverpool. So I'll go for a 2-0.
As bad as he is,
as bad as his form has been. No,
I love how the Leeds fan had a bigger reaction than me. I was like, oh,
as bad as his form has been. I apologize.
If he'd said Mane, I'd have gone, yeah, fair enough, because that's horrific form. It's sort of like he's got 1 goal in the last 4 or 5 games. He's horrendously poor.
But is it actually form though? I've turned away from kind of the form angle with Liverpool's forwards and Mane especially. Has it now turned from being completely out of form to actually being semi-disinterested in actually not just turning up, but in the game, making that effort that you need to in the Premier League? You can't be out of form. Such a good play and playing for a club like Liverpool, you can't be out of form for that amount of games. I think there has to be slightly more to it. Nothing against the manager or against the players. I think ultimately with all the success that they've had, because it's now slightly gone awry in the Premier League, they've almost naturally gone, do you know what? I'm just going to go 90% instead of 100, and it's easy to tell, isn't it?
Yeah, it could be combination of mental fatigue, and I think out of all the front three, I think they worked out. I think Manny's had 2 weeks off now in 2 years, and he's still got the African Cup of Nations to come up this summer. So there is the element of that, which, to be fair, is probably why they bought Jota. But unfortunately, he's not been available. I think that's for those. That's what's killed it a little bit for us. But
yeah, for those forwards, I don't think it's anything kind of almost malicious. Do you know what I mean? Or any fallouts or anything. I think it's just a natural progression. You've gone to the highest highs, and all of a sudden, you've got to a stage where, a bit like Wolves are in their season, where there's actually almost nothing to play for, but you're on that kind of level where you're going to try and hopefully win the Champions League to qualify for the Champions League again. And they've just won and done so well. There is that natural kind of breathe out. And in the Premier League, you get caught out, don't you? It just shows you how good a league it is, and that you can, if you're not on 100%, you do get found out, don't you?
Yeah, because I mean, there are other leagues. I think me and Oscar talk about the Bundesliga and even La Liga. You can coast probably for at least half the games. There aren't many games in this league you can coast. And even teams that you beat, like Sheffield United, you generally beat Sheffield United quite comfortably. But you've still got to work a bit harder.
Look at how Fulham played. Fulham were really good.
I mean, really there's a lot of talk about how poor Liverpool were. But, Fulham did what a lot of the teams did. But the difference with Fulham was, although they were organised, it wasn't just a low block and that's it. It was on the break. They were dangerous on the break. They were so improved from the Craven Cottage draw we had against them. And I don't think enough was made of how well Fulham did. And I think
when Fulham turned up at the King Power and beat Leicester 2-1, Leicester were flying, doing well. Fulham were really down in their dumps. It was almost a turnaround for Fulham, and everyone said, "How have they? What a surprise result!" And I just kept on saying, "Do you know what? After watching that game for the 90 minutes at the King Power, doing my job down at King Power, after watching that game, I was like, they actually were 100% value for the win. Leicester were wasteful in their attack, but overall played all right. Fulham just came and were the better team on the day. It wasn't really a shock seeing the game live, and it just shows you that, that it was their real turnaround. But it's the Premier League, isn't it?
I think if you're a Liverpool fan, you've got to hope for perhaps Liverpool do a bit of a City. City were below their standards last year. There were factors why that was, and as a Liverpool fan, you've got to have the hope of, the right sort of tweaks to the squad. They can kick on and get themselves back in the mix again. That I think, unfortunately, a lot of Liverpool fans, they don't want to hear this, but it is one of those seasons where it's not going to go for us. It hasn't been going for us at all in the league. You've got to take your medicine, and do you know what? Take your banter off your opposition fans.
Yep.
We've had 3 years of not really many digs at us because we've done really well. Sometimes you've just got to take your licks. I mean, look, I've been through Souness, I've been through the Hodgson eras, I've been through the tail end of Rodgers, the debacle at the end of the Rafa era with the ownership. This is a bad season, but there are much worse seasons than this. Anyway,
it's amazing how you don't have to go back very far. You said your first game was 94, mine was 92, and I go back to 11,000 fans turning up and when they're playing Southend at home in a league match at Filbert Street, and now you look at Leicester and where they are in the training ground, it's just a million miles away. And some fans, they moan about things, which is fine because maybe it's their era. But I turn around and go, I don't count myself as an old person at all. But you don't have to go back very far for some clubs, even the likes of Liverpool, where you've got times which are 100% worse than they are at the moment. A bit of perspective sometimes is not the worst when it comes to the immediate reaction after a result.
It is. I mean, Oscar would be laughing at me going, "You've had bad times," because I know what he's been through with Leeds. You know, I know it's all in perspective.
You've never had Dave Hockaday, though, have you? You've never had Dave Hockaday just turn up out of absolutely nowhere. Who's now a PE teacher in Bristol, I think.
Yeah, but we did have Roy Hodgson, though. So that's
we had Tim Sherwood. We win.
Dave Hockaday was managing Forest Green Rovers when he took over at Leeds.
We had Martin Allen, who signed 20 players in the postseason, and then on his first game said he was actually intimidated by the size of the King Power, and he left about 4 or 5 games later because he wanted to go back down to Barnet because it was his level. His words.
So we should probably do a show on this, shouldn't we? Of like mad football stories. I bet you there's loads of these, aren't there? So Oscar, how are you seeing Wolves versus Liverpool?
I've got to be honest, Liverpool, I know obviously Leipzig, despite what the Bundesliga position might say, I don't think are that good. To be honest, at this moment in time, I think they were better last season than what they are now. I think Fabinho in that holding midfield role makes such a difference. I can only compare it to Leeds when Calvin Phillips doesn't play in that position. You're only half a team. And I think that's going to play a massive part in Liverpool's finish to the season, because I do fancy Liverpool to have a pretty strong finish. I think obviously if they can get that back four a bit more settled in terms of the two centre-backs, and I think they'll be okay. I think Jota came into the false 9 position that played by Firmino for so many years. And I think he did really well against Leipzig. I think he made one of the goals. But I've got to say on Mane, Mane's an interesting one. I still think he's a world-class player. I still think he's absolutely top class. I think it's more Firmino for me. I know what Pete was saying in terms of when the form is such a sustained period of poor form. I think it's more Firmino, really. I think his levels just dropped off massively. Still produces glimpses, but his levels dropped off massively. And I think it's the fact that he came out and Jota came in that suggests that maybe Klopp's just ran out of patience a little bit with him and he wants more of a pure goal-scoring number 9. But in terms of Mane, I think you mentioned in terms of City, Chris, I think you saw the same with Bernardo Silva last season. I think you just played so many games. Eventually, you're just going to burn out. I think Leeds have got players like that at the minute who are facing that problem where you just play so many games consecutively, week in, week out. Obviously, a shortened pre-season as well. More intense schedule since they come back. And I think, of course, no fans in the ground. I think Mane, for me, is one of those players, when I look at him, I think he really feeds off that atmosphere in terms of the roar of the Kop, in terms of the second half and that lot. And I just think that he still produces moments. And I think he's still top class in that sense. And I think when he's on it might be a very controversial point, this, but when out of all the front three on their absolute best, I'd actually say Mane's probably the best of the lot when he's at his best. But I just think Salah, for consistency, is clearly the man. And when you've got Salah and Mane in there, you've always got a chance. And I think Liverpool really turned it on against Wolves, to be honest. I'm going to go 3-0 Liverpool. I think THIAGO playing in his natural position, Fabinho back in. I just think that naturally Fabinho sitting in there gives Trent a bit more protection as well. Trent pushes further forward. Robertson gets a bit further forward as well. 3-0 Liverpool. Quite a comfortable one, I think.
Thank you very much. For me, I've got a slight reservation about this game because despite what I think a lot of people are thinking, I don't think he's going to play the same 11. The reason I think that is, I think Gini and Robbo are going to get dropped out of this game. Main reason being is Scotland have got 3 qualifiers next week, and Robson's captain. He's going to play every game. Gini, I think he's vice captain for Holland. He's going to play every game. At some point, they've got to get rests because we can't afford for them to drop out, because I think they're the only 2 players that haven't missed minutes really for us. So I could see a Tsimikas and a Keita coming in. I think the rest will stay in. I think what is going to help Liverpool is they can ask a lot of the other players to go again, because the Brazilian lads have been told they're not going to Brazil. I think they've actually cancelled the qualifiers for that. And I believe Jota and Mane and Keita have been told they're not going on their qualifiers to avoid the quarantine issues that were coming, which I'm sure probably Leicester and Tottenham and Leeds have probably got similar situation with some of their players. I think the English lads are still going away. So I'm going for a hopeful 2-0 Liverpool, partly because our away record is better than our home record, which, to be honest, based on the last 6 weeks, is not difficult.
I'm not complaining if Rafinha doesn't go to the Brazil team, though. I'm not complaining if it doesn't. If it keeps Rafinha out the shop window, I'm perfectly happy with that. To be fair, if he doesn't go and play for Brazil,
I think
There's been a bit of an issue in Leicestershire, where there's been a spate of break-ins at the players' houses, and the only thing that was taken was the passports, and the silhouette of a Brendan Rodgers shape has been seen in everyone's house, and he's just taken the passport, so no one can go anywhere. That's the,
I think I did read
there for a second.
I have read though. I think the South American qualifiers. I think they agreed to South American people that they're going to cancel them because they realised all the European-based players aren't going to come over. So they realised the likes of Brazil are going, we don't want to play whoever they've got in the qualifier without Ederson or Alisson or Rafinha or Lucas Moura, correct, or Richarlison, So that could actually be a benefit to clubs like Liverpool and Tottenham and Everton and City, that some of their players are actually going to be able to have like a week off or like light training for a week. So I'm going for a hopeful 2-0 to Liverpool. Just before we go, I just want to wish get well soon to former Liverpool player Mark Gonzalez, who shockingly at the age of 36 is recovering from a heart attack, which it's never nice for anyone to suffer anything like that, but you don't expect someone to suffer a heart attack at 36. So hopefully, he's on the road to recovery and it's all going well. So I also just want to say to everyone, thanks very much to tuning in. Thank you very much to all the comments that I've received and, well wishing. It's much appreciated. Now, next week, it is international football, and if you think we're going to do predictions on international football, you've got another thing coming. So we aren't going to be doing that. What we're going to do next Friday is Gav will definitely be on the show, and two others, and we're probably going to do some form of a draft. But for once, I'm going to be on the mic side of it, so I don't have the stress of actually having to do one for a change, because as Oscar scored last time doing a draft, I think I went grayer as the show went on, and also Oscar won, so that was also a bit of a kick of the teeth.
I love Juninho as well. I'm still gutted about that. Keith took Juninho off me. I'm still bitter about that.
You hide it well, though. It's all right. So, anyway, guys, thanks so much, Oscar. Thanks for coming on, mate. I'm sure we'll have you on again soon. Matt, no doubt we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time. And Pete, we'll definitely have you on again soon. Thanks so much, guys. So that's been the Friday Forecast. We'll see you all next Friday.